But we will start tonight with the wind farm war, those who claim turbines are having an impact on surrounding communities versus those who say it's all in the mind. Now, the latest debate centres around a recent Australian study whose author has found there is a link. While it's being played down by the industry, those living near the wind farm tell a very different story. Rodney Lose reports.
Can't identify any causal link between wind farms and health.
It depends upon what you define by causal. If you take it as patterns that relate to the hypothesis of different wind speeds or power outputs, there was definitely a link.
It's the report that has the wind energy industry in a spin. Same report, two very different interpretations, all depending on what you have at stake.
There is nothing in this report to justify any form of compensation.
We found certain wind speeds that related to the high levels of disturbance.
According to medical authorities, wind farms are perfectly safe and cause no adverse health impacts. Yet here and overseas, people who live near them say they are getting sick.
You're not able to do anything. You're not able to cook. You're not able to clean. You're not able to live. You're not able to work.
We've actually vacated the house and we've been away for about 3 months.
Ever since they've been starting turning, my ears have been hurting.
But despite this, no one could prove what it was about wind farms that made those living nearby feel unwell. And so they have continued to be constructed in their thousands. Enter Stephen Cooper and Pacific Hydro. Stephen Cooper is an acoustic engineer, recognised in this country as an expert in his field, involved in writing Australian standards on noise, especially for the aircraft industry.
When I started the study, I was utilising the results of testing in South Australia at the Waterloo Wind Farm, where residents could perceive the operation of the wind farm without seeing it or without hearing it. And I was linking that perception to what's called infrasound, which is below the normal level of frequency of hearing.
Pacific Hydro is an energy company owned by Australian superannuation funds and the operator of wind farms in Australia and overseas. Lane Crockett is Executive General Manager of Pacific Hydro.
If you go to the peak medical body, they will tell you that there's no causal link between wind farms and health.
It's a concept supported by Sydney University's School of Public Health's Professor Simon Chapman, not a medical specialist, but an avowed enemy of wind farm critics.
You can see I've put some examples of quotes there, conclusions. There's no evidence that the audible or subaudible sounds emitted by wind turbines have any direct adverse physiological effects.
And so Pacific Hydro decided to stump up the money for another study.
There are sensations that are recorded. I was required to conduct noise and vibration measurements to determine certain wind speeds and certain sound levels that related to disturbances by 6 specific local residences.
Stephen Cooper was looking for a link between something happening at the wind farm and complaints by residents in 3 houses nearby, each with 2 residents. His theory, infrasound, low-frequency noise below what can be heard, was impacting residents.
What you're able to do when carrying out tests is that you can demonstrate people can feel infrasound at a level below when it becomes audible.
Pacific Hydro has so far played down Cooper's study.
In our view, the results do not demonstrate a strong enough correlation to support the conclusion of a causal link between the infrasound frequencies in existence and residents' observations.
We don't have a correlation with the results because we don't have enough data. There is definitely a trend. There is definitely a connection between the operation of the wind farm and what the residents were identifying as disturbances. And so it's open to debate as to what a causal link is in terms of that data.
But the people who were in the study, like Melissa Ware, say it's sufficient proof to show this isn't all just in their head.
We've been talking about the noise and the vibration in our home for a long time, and to have Stephen Cooper come and do such an intensive study means a lot to me and to the other residents.
Although hearing impaired, Melissa says she can sense the turbines. Often the sensation drives her from her home.
The noise and the vibration come up through the pillow, the impact's worse than when you're standing just listening.
For 2 months, the test subjects had to fill out diaries of what they felt. In particular, if they sensed anything, especially a sensation many said made them unwell. This was called Sensation 5. And Cooper then tried to correlate that to something possibly happening at the wind farm.
The sensation criteria came from a UK wind farm study which was based on noise, and then the word in the severity ranking changed from noise to vibration or sensation.
As this was never a medical study, he can't say the wind farm was making people sick. But at the exact time people were reporting Sensation 5, something was happening at the wind farm.
Severity 5 was classified as being a level that was harmful to a person's health or was causing them severe discomfort. The residents, in looking at the data, also added that Sensation 5 was a level at which they wanted to leave or did actually leave their property.
The study has already attracted a lot of attention, support and criticism.
And Sydney University's Professor of Public Health, Simon Chapman, was even more damning, telling MediaWatch,
"Scientifically, it's an absolutely atrocious piece of research and is entirely unpublishable other than on the front page of The Australian."
Mr Cooper responded in this way to his main critic, Professor Chapman, and has commenced legal action against him.
As far as I understand, Professor Chapman is not a scientist, he's not an engineer. I have had eminent acousticians around the world who have congratulated me on the work, have issued reviews to say that the work is of significance, is of benefit, and is a step forward in trying to understand what wind farms are generating.
Dr Paul Schomer, the Standards Director for the Acoustical Society of America, is one of those acousticians.
I think it's a very good study. It's the only study in the world that we know of that's been done with the cooperation of a wind farm. And so it's able to get data that no one else has been able to get.
And it's integral in showing a connection between infrasound and human impact.
It doesn't quite form the link between medical issues. It forms the link that the people are affected not by hearing the sound, that there's a pathway to the people's brain other than hearing.
Dr Schomer was involved in a similar study in a community called Shirley in Wisconsin in the United States.
3 families in Shirley that had moved out of their houses because of the sound and problems with the infrasound.
He hopes wind power has an important future in terms of meeting our energy needs, but he also says more needs to be done to understand how it impacts humans.
They don't want to acknowledge problems. It really doesn't matter what the problem was. This happens to be infrasound.
For Stephen Cooper, he says now it's time for a well-funded medical study.
To do medical studies, you need to have a character or a signature that you can apply to the wind farm to identify that the wind farm is operating before you can do the medical studies. What has come out of this work is that by use of the signature and a level and characteristic that I have determined allows the medical researchers to now start that work.